is in the name of Dr. Russell Norman. Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister and asks, does he have confidence in all his ministers?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, yes.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does he have confidence in his Minister of Conservation, given that the Auditor-General cited DOC's regional conservancy staff as the strength of the organisation, and it is these very jobs that are being targeted for elimination?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, yes.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russell Norman.
Is it true that various jobs in the Department of Conservation are being renamed by Nick Smith as Rangers, so that Dr. Smith can give the impression that frontline staff are not being cut at DOC? And is this the kind of spin that he expects from his ministers?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, yes and no are the answer to that question. I'd refer the member to the statements by Al Morrison yesterday when he said in particular, while I acknowledge the next few months will be a period of uncertainty for DOC staff and their families, I'm confident DOC will be able to maintain all its key outputs in species protection, pest control and the provision of recreational facilities within the new streamlined organisational structure.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So just to confirm, his answer was yes to my question, is it true that various jobs in DOC are being renamed by Nick Smith as Rangers so that Dr. Smith can give the impression that frontline staff are not being cut at DOC?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, no. As I said, yes to the first bit, they are being renamed as Rangers. No, there is not spin involved.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question. Order. Supplementary question, Dr. Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given that his minister is moving DOC to focusing more on a business that makes money rather than a conservation-focused organisation, is this what he expects from his Minister of Conservation? And will the PM step in to rule out DOC staff having to wear corporate sponsor uniforms and logos?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
No, I think what is happening within the Department of Conservation is that Al Morrison rightfully is actually leading the organisation to reflect the sort of 21st century approach. If there are companies, I think as I saw the clip last night on TV, if there are companies that want to play a role in terms of conservation in New Zealand, then that could be a welcome thing. I mean, if one goes overseas, as I'm sure that member has, and as I do, you can see within national parks and things around the world, actually there are roles where corporations adopt highways or adopt national parks or whatever it might be, and that money is used actually for the benefit of people who go to those national parks. What would be so wrong about that?
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does he have confidence in his Minister for Climate Change issues that according to Treasury, New Zealand is now on track for a net emissions increase of up to 50% by 2020?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, yes, and I point the member to the period of time where emissions really grew wildly in this country, and that was under a Labor government supported by the Greens.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does he have confidence in his Environment Minister, given that Guy Salmon, an ecologist, a former National Party candidate, co-author of the National Party Blue-Green Vision Statement, and one of the architects of the Land and Water Forum, said about his minister, and I quote, "This is the first time I have dealt with a minister who has been wanting to lower environmental standards. This shouldn't be happening in New Zealand."
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, yes, and I'd utterly reject that assertion by Mr. Salmon. In fact, the Minister cares passionately about the environment and is playing an important role to make sure that we are improving, amongst other things, water quality in New Zealand.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russell Norman.
Given that Guy Salmon co-wrote the National Party's Blue-Green Vision Statement, why is Guy Salmon now denouncing the environmental performance of the national government? Has Guy Salmon changed, or is it just that this government's second-term agenda is so toxic to the environment that Mr. Salmon has been forced to speak out?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, if the member wants to know what Guy Salmon thinks, the member should bring Guy Salmon.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russell Norman. Order. Order. Supplementary question, Dr. Russell Norman.
Is this government's second-term toxic environmental agenda, whether it's in Department of Conservation, whether it's in climate change, whether it's in RMA changes, is that toxic agenda being driven by his ministers, or will he take personal responsibility for it?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, well, I'd utterly reject that there is a toxic environmental review. If there is anything toxic, it's the fact that the Green Party decided to keep Brendan Horan's proxy.
Order. Order. Supplementary question, Chris Hipkins.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Why does he have confidence in the Minister of Education, given she repeatedly denied having been consulted on Leslie Longstone's resignation and $425,000 payout during question time yesterday, and then snuck into the House at 9:55 p.m. last night to admit that she was?
Order. That question with the piece about snuck in is an unnecessary... It's a reflection. It's order. Order. I'm trying to help the member get a legitimate answer to his question. But to suggest that a member who's not even here to defend herself snuck into the House, I think is an unnecessary imputation in that question. Now, I just invite the member to ask the question again, remove that bit, and it's a perfectly legitimate question.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Why does he have confidence in the Minister of Education, given she repeatedly denied having been consulted on Leslie Longstone's resignation and $425,000 payout during question time yesterday, and then came into the House at 9:55 p.m. last night to admit that she was?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I think the Minister on reflection decided that she did need to at least clarify her answers, so she came in to correct them. That was the first available occasion that the House could allow her to do that, and it is actually normal for people to have to correct answers. I've had to do it, other ministers have had to do it, and the Leader of the Opposition's had to do it.
A point of order, the Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Point of order, Mr Speaker. The fact is that the Minister had considerable time to actually correct the misinformation to the House, and to describe it at 9:55 as snucking in is totally a sound use of language, and I think you cannot purely demand that people couch their questions in the framework of another's very limited language.
And the member is quite entitled to his opinion. I have a different opinion, and the way the question was subsequently worded, I felt was a far better way to word it. And the order, the Prime Minister then subsequently answered it. Point of order, Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr Speaker, the Prime Minister in his answer indicated that 9:55 was a first opportunity. Is it still within the standing orders to report progress in order to make a correction? It used to be the case to report progress from a committee, to seek leave, to sit again, and to make a fulsome apology at the right time, rather than hiding in one's office and popping down when everyone's left.
I have no ability of knowing the engagement. I don't need the Prime Minister's assistance. I have no knowledge of the diary of the Minister of Education and whether she had time available to come down earlier than that or not. I don't even know whether she was in Wellington. So from my point of view, the only part I was objecting to was the word snuck in. Whether the Minister had an opportunity to come down earlier, that is for the Minister. It is not for the Speaker to know. Point of order, the Right Honourable John Key.
Mr Speaker, the advice I've had is the Minister came to the House before 6 o'clock, tried to actually correct the statements before 6 o'clock, was advised by the clerk that that wasn't possible and she should come back before 10 o'clock.
Speaking to that point of order, Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr Speaker, I'm sure you will work with your staff so that ministers are better advised in the future.
The member can be absolutely assured that I'll work very well with my staff. Are there further questions? I move to question number 2. Point of order, the Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Surely it will occur to you that if the Prime Minister is correct that the Minister was ready to make the change in her answer before 6 p.m, then why would it require 9:55 p.m. to come to this House and give her explanation?
Order.
Personal explanation about the question cannot be made while the House is in committee, and the House was in committee until 9:50.
The clerk advises that the House was in committee at that time. A personal explanation cannot be made while the House is in committee, and the time that it came out of committee was obviously at 9:55. I move to question number 2, David Shearer.